This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Spain eases lockdown, allows children a breath of fresh air. Tunisia to benefit from a $650 million loan from the European Union to fight COVID-19. And Muslims fast under coronavirus lockdowns. This is CGTN. Welcome to Africa Live with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program. In sports, we'll tell you about the great marathon duel that never was. We begin in Spain, where the daily death toll was less than 300 on Sunday, the lowest in over a month. It comes as residents were told they'll be allowed to leave their homes for short walks and exercise from next weekend. Our correspondent Rahul Pathak has more from Madrid.
Here in Spain, children under the age of 14 have been allowed out for the first time in nearly 7 weeks of lockdown. Up till now, they've been allowed out only to accompany their parents to the shops or to buy food or for medicine, and if there was no one at home to look after them. And with up to 2/3 of children living in high-rise apartment blocks here, that's placed an immense amount of pressure, not just on children, but on the parents as well, on young families, as this lockdown continues. But from today, they've been allowed out for up to an hour a day, accompanied by one parent to walk, run or play in an area no further than 1 kilometre away from their home. Well, on Saturday, the Prime Minister here, Pedro Sanchez, addressed the nation in a TV address, and he said that people could be allowed out for walks and for exercise as early as May the 2nd. But this is the important bit, only if the contagion numbers, as he described it, only if the contagion numbers continued to fall. Now, remember, the lockdown is due to end here, the official lockdown is due to end here on May the 10th. Pedro Sanchez in this TV address also said that any de-escalation would occur at different speeds depending on the situation in each region of Spain.
British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, who's deputising for the country's Prime Minister, says Boris Johnson will be back at work this week. Mr. Johnson was hospitalised and spent 3 days in ICU after contracting the coronavirus.
He's going to be back at work full-time, properly at the helm on Monday. And as you can imagine, with the Prime Minister, he's raring to go.
The coronavirus death toll in the UK hospitals passed 20,000 on Saturday. Britain's standing leader says the government must not rush to ease the lockdown and should act cautiously to avoid a second spike. Some politicians are calling on the government to keep the nationwide lockdown until at least May the 7th. New autopsy results show that 2 people in California died of the novel coronavirus up to 3 weeks before the previously known first U.S. death from COVID-19. They died on February the 6th and the 17th. It was previously believed that the first coronavirus death in the U.S. happened on February the 29th in Washington state. Santa Clara County officials say the 2 had no significant travel history that would have exposed them to the virus. Hundreds of millions of Muslims around the world started observing the holy month of Ramadan this week. But due to the pandemic, many countries have been forced into restricting certain traditional practices. In Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, worshippers would usually be kneeling beside each other, but they're practicing physical distancing. In Indonesia, they've been banned from attending religious gatherings. The government is also asking people not to travel as they might normally do during the holy month. In Egypt's capital, Cairo, people have still been out delivering food to the vulnerable, which is in accordance with one of the 5 principles of the faith. In South Africa, the situation is the same. Muslims are observing the holy month under restrictive measures. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
It's a holy fasting month like never before. Muslims across the world have been forced to perform their prayers at home as the COVID-19 pandemic lingers.
Mosques around South Africa are normally a hive of activity during the month of Ramadan,
But with lockdown and suspended mosque prayers, Muslims across the world and here in South Africa have had to turn to social media to keep in touch.
Like the rest of the world, Muslims have had to either find novel ways or call on ways that already existed. So let's speak about this. Everyone's used online tools. So there's still some level of connectivity with the places of worship during Ramadan 2020.
We're so lucky, like also with social media that we have, we can communicate with everyone sort of around the world and everything. And, like with these Instagram live videos and stuff, you can sort of have that vibe, and see what it is like for other people. Although it's virtually communicating, you are able to communicate with people.
But under this year's unique set of circumstances, many believe there will be more time for rituals.
For many students as such, this time is like, it's like you're hustling because you have university school and then you have studies and then you have to worry about your spiritual obligations. So like this year, you have more time to do those such sort of spiritual things, and you don't have any sort of excuse as such that like, no, I can't do this, I'll do it later. So it's like right now in the moment.
There's also a blessing in that. I think it is also a very poignant time in actually you actually become intrinsic with that family household, and you become a unit and you connect, because there's no work to go to and there's no school pressure, so you're actually very, very focused in just the prayer as well. Now you've got a lot more time and no excuses.
Even with cancelled iftar feasts and suspended mosque prayers, Asma and Shazia will not let the coronavirus dampen their holy month.
Ramadan Kareem to all the Muslims around the world. I know that this one is a very different one compared to the others, but may this month be filled with abundant blessings, and have a great one. Remember us all in your prayers.
In the month of Ramadan, we constantly believe that it is a blessed time and the Almighty hears, and you pray with a good heart and with intention, and things will always fall into place.
Observing Ramadan during this global pandemic won't change what this special time is about: generosity, compassion, and service to others. Judy Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
For the first time in a month, shops in Egypt have reopened this weekend after the government eased some of the anti-pandemic restrictions. The authorities have allowed people more time on the streets, hoping that their outings and shopping will help the economy pick up. CGTN's Adel Mahmouri reports from Cairo.
Over the past month, shops in Egypt have been forced to close at night during weekdays and shut completely on weekends. These are usually the busiest sales times. Many have suffered under the COVID-19 partial lockdown.
At first, we used to sell a lot of disinfectant wipes and liquid, but not anymore. It lasted for a week and then people got bored. They are now staying at home and they have their stocks, and the sales have now dropped. It's below the usual average. There are clients that I haven't seen in weeks. Those with kids are afraid to go out and they don't want to get infected.
This week, though, the government has finally lifted some of its restrictions. All malls and shops can now operate all week long until 9 o'clock in the evening when the night curfew begins. The first weekend has passed, but Hamdi says nothing much has changed for him.
It would have been better if I stayed at home. The entire market around me, if you take a look around, fruits, vegetables, any goods, no one is selling. People have been staying at home without work for over a month now. Where will they get the money? I expected things would be better, but so far they are not.
The Egyptian government is hoping that its relaxation measures in markets would help the economy pick up. That was evident in shopping malls that serve Egyptians with higher income than those at common markets like this one. But it appears some are still struggling. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. Tunisia to benefit from a $650 million loan from the European Union to fight COVID-19. And we take a look at the impact of the ongoing lockdown in South Africa.
It has been dubbed as the world's worst health crisis in modern history. The coronavirus pandemic is threatening to rip apart Africa's social and economic fabric.
Consider a risk are guided to a special facility where the entire flight get tested for COVID-19.
CGTN shares the struggles, the pain, and the anguish as African economies are moving to triumph over COVID-19.
Tunisia will benefit from a concessional loan of almost $650 million granted by the European Union to fight the coronavirus pandemic. According to a statement from the EU Commission, the facility is part of a $3.2 billion aid program for 10 countries in and around Europe, available for 12 months. The financing will be used to strengthen the resilience of the Tunisian economy and will help limit the economic fallout of the pandemic. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi tells us more.
This macro-financial assistance is part of the European Union's initiative to support the effort of some of its partner countries in limiting the negative economic and social repercussions of the COVID-19 crisis.
The total of the EU's macro-financial assistance package is €3 billion. With €600 million, Tunisia is the second largest beneficiary after Ukraine, which has been granted €1.2 billion. There are several loan conditions for the aid and is only given to countries that have a clear reform program with the International Monetary Fund.
The senior financial analyst adds that the pandemic will have innumerable consequences on the Tunisian economy. Consequently, the state will need additional resources to address this unprecedented situation.
All beneficiaries, including Tunisia, have freedom to use the funds in the way they deem right, but the final objective is to improve the balance of payments. That is, Tunisia will face problems at the level for its foreign exchange reserves, current account deficit as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. The central bank will be in charge of distributing the financial assistance.
Members of the Finance Commission at the House of the People's Representatives assert that Tunisia needs more support from its foreign partners to limit the impact of the COVID-19 crisis.
The EU support at this critical period is very important. The state budget needs external resources because the economy has stopped to tackle the pandemic that is taking a toll on the health, social and economic aspects. The post-COVID-19 period and the post-general lockdown will be very difficult and any financial support is welcome.
The governor of the Central Bank of Tunisia and the Minister of Finance have examined the progress of mechanisms for refinancing and guaranteeing credits granted by banks to companies impacted by the pandemic. Experts assert that the EU's €600 million microfinancing assistance to Tunisia will help the government implement its national emergency plan to support small and medium-sized enterprises and businesses that are affected by the economic consequences of the pandemic and its social impact on the population. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
After its passenger services came to almost a complete halt due to the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, Africa's largest airline, Ethiopian Airlines, has ramped up its cargo services as one way to boost its revenues. The Addis Ababa-based airline has announced its cargo business has grown at least 3 times over the past few months and said it is converting passenger planes to cargo planes to take advantage of the rising trade in cargo business. CGTN's Girum Chala reports.
These more than 100 Ethiopian Airlines owned fleet of passenger planes are parked for days now. The serious impacts of the coronavirus triggered flight restrictions have already been seen here. But ET is making profits somewhere else. It's a cargo business.
We are operating in a triangular way. We go with perishable agricultural products from here to Europe. Then industrial high-tech products from Europe to China. Then from China, the industrial products of the textiles, personal effects, and other electronics and electronic equipment and mobile and mobile batteries. We transport to the rest of Africa. So it's a triangular type of business. We are growing, I can say, almost double and triple times.
Over the past 10 years, Ethiopia's flag carrier has aggressively invested on cargo planes and service facilities, which has finally paid off.
This is a state-of-the-art distribution center, as you can see, with cold storage of different adjustable temperatures. Over this also there is dry store with fully automated machineries. And 10 777 freighters, airplanes, two 737 freighters.
Unlike the passenger side of the airliner, the cargo unit here is thriving and is busier than it has ever been. Ethiopian Airlines also says it is removing chairs from passenger aircrafts, raiding them for more cargo business.
We were also among the very first airline to convert passenger airplane to cargo, meaning starting to load cargo in the cabin. Now, we have also started removing seats from the passenger aircraft. So we are making it entirely cargo.
Ethiopian Airlines is also the one airliner responsible in transporting hundreds of thousands of tons of medical consignments, mainly from China and the rest of the world, to Africa. The CEO says ET is determined to continue its performance during these difficult times.
Ethiopia as an economy, as a country, cannot afford to give us bailout money like the US or Europe or Dubai or Qatar. We know that our country has a lot of quite many pressing and urgent priorities in this crisis. So we are very determined among ourselves, 17,000 employees, to make sure that the airline survives within its own internal resources.
Currently, ET's cargo facility is also serving as UN's Africa humanitarian air hub for COVID-19 response. Many say Ethiopian Airlines is playing a historic role. Grumjala, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
The Chinese company Zambia-China Economic and Trade Cooperation Zone has donated food to thousands of Zambians displaced by floods in Malole constituency. The company donated over 3,000 bags of cereals and other essentials. In the recent months, heavy rains have destroyed thousands of acres of crop and displaced many in rural areas. Many houses are still submerged in over 6 regions in the northern parts of the country. Speaking while receiving the donation, Zambia's Commerce and Trade Minister Christopher Bwalwa Yaluma thanked the Chinese company, saying this kind of gesture will help in easing the suffering of displaced persons.
This is humanity, and certainly it will go a long way in alleviating the food insecurity that has ravaged our people in Malole constituency, in the northern part of the country.
South Africa has managed to keep its COVID-19 infection rate low compared to other countries. Since the lockdown started on the 26th of March, the infection rate dropped from over 40% to 4%. But the lockdown is starting to cause other problems like poverty and starvation. Hundreds of people are unable to work in order to feed themselves and their families. Sumitra Naidu reports.
Lesego Modise is the director of a food manufacturing company in Johannesburg. Buntu Foods produces a number of edible products for Nestle, one of the world's largest food and beverage companies.
We produce for Nestle, but we also produce our own brands. We have our own soya, we have our own instant mache, we have our own instant porridge, we have soups, we have cereals, and we are hoping to grow the product range with time. We are one of the youngest producers, co-packers, but we believe that we're probably going to have one of the biggest brands, because we have takeoffs with countries like Rwanda.
Modise has a permit to continue working during the lockdown, but he wants to help those less fortunate. His company is still able to provide work for his staff so they can provide for their families.
The current situation with the COVID-19 has created opportunities and also challenges. It was just about us thinking outside the box and positioning ourselves differently. Everybody's losing money, I think. We are losing money, but we're keeping our head afloat and remodeling how we're doing business. We have 127 people, and myself included in that, and we've gone from running 2 shifts to running 3 shifts.
During this lockdown, most families have lost their only source of income, making it hard to buy food.
Sharing is? Yes. As a parent, it's afforded me a chance to take my children on a journey of understanding. We have a saying in my house that sharing is caring. My children are starting to understand that by giving back, you know. That's important to me. You know what? In every situation, there's opportunities. That's actually allowed me to put my brand into people's hands faster without a retailer.
The lockdown has definitely brought forward selfless acts among South Africans, the true definition of Ubuntu. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And your sports news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. The great marathon duel that never was. We'll bring you the details after this.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines.
You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Two of the greatest long-distance runners ever, Eliud Kipchoge and Kenenisa Bekele, would have gone head-to-head this Sunday at the London Marathon before its postponement due to the coronavirus. The organizers are hopeful the two will eventually compete